November 13th, 2022. Something horrible happened inside a rented house on King Road in Moscow, Idaho. Four University of Idaho students lost their lives that night. Their names were Kaylee Goncalves, Madison Mogan, Xana Kernadle, and Ethan Chapin. All four were young, full of life, and just weeks away from finishing another semester of college. Someone entered the home in the middle of the night and attacked them while they slept. Two other roommates were inside the house at the time but were not hurt. When the news broke the next day, the whole town of Moscow fell into shock, and soon the entire country was watching. Now that you know how this terrible night began, let us look at what came right after. The investigation begins. Police faced a hard task from the very start. There was no clear reason for the attack, and at first, there was no name attached to any of the leads. Investigators received more than 19,000 tips from people trying to help, yet weeks went by with no arrest. Detectives studied phone records, car sightings, and every small detail from the crime scene. They found that a white car had been seen near the house that night, and this detail became one of the biggest clues in the early stage of the case. While detectives worked around the clock, one small item left behind at the scene would end up changing everything. The knife sheath clue. At the scene, police found a leather knife sheath left near one of the victims. It had a small marking on it and had clearly been used to hold a hunting-style knife. The actual knife was never found, but the sheath had something valuable on it, a tiny trace of DNA. This trace was too small to match anyone in a normal police database, so investigators turned to a newer method called genetic genealogy. This method compares DNA to family trees built from public genealogy websites instead of only comparing it to criminal records. Slowly, this method helped investigators build a list of possible relatives connected to the DNA on the sheath. With this new lead in hand, police needed one more piece of proof, and that piece came from an unexpected place. The Q-tip that cracked the case. Following the genealogy trail, investigators found their way to a family in Pennsylvania. To confirm the connection without tipping anyone off, agents quietly collected trash from outside the family home. Inside, they found a simple used cotton swab that had been thrown away. When the DNA from that swab was tested, it matched closely with the sample from the knife sheath. This was enough for investigators to feel confident they had found the right family. And from there, all eyes turned to one member of that household, a young man named Bryan Kohberger. Once that connection was made, things moved quickly, and an arrest soon followed. The arrest. In the final days of December 2022, police arrested Bryan Kohberger at his parents' home in Pennsylvania. He was a graduate student studying criminology at nearby Washington State University, just a short drive from the University of Idaho campus. This detail shocked many people, since he had been studying crime and criminal behavior himself. He was brought back to Idaho to face charges, and the case that had gripped the whole country for weeks finally had a name attached to it. After the arrest came a long stretch of legal battles that lasted for years. The long road to trial. The case moved slowly through the courts. There were fights over where the trial should be held, since so many people in the local area already had strong opinions about it. Eventually, the trial location was moved from the small college town to a bigger city to try to find jurors with less exposure to the case. Lawyers went back and forth over what evidence could be used, including deep arguments about the DNA testing methods and how the knife sheath had been handled after it was found. The trial date was pushed back more than once, and for a long time it looked like this case would end with a full jury trial. But just before that trial was set to begin, something unexpected happened. The guilty plea. In the summer of 2025, Bryan Kohberger agreed to plead guilty to all 4 murders. This plea came as part of a deal with prosecutors that removed the possibility of the death penalty from the table. For the families of the victims, this plea meant they would not have to sit through a long and painful trial, but it also meant they would never get the full public explanation of why this happened. Kohberger admitted in court that he was responsible for the deaths of all 4 students. With the plea entered, the next step was for a judge to decide his punishment. The sentencing. Later that same summer, a judge sentenced Kohberger to 4 terms of life in prison with no chance of parole. During the sentencing, family members and friends of the victims stood up and spoke about the pain this loss brought into their lives. Kohberger showed little reaction during these statements. He was then moved to a maximum security prison in Idaho, where he remains held in a highly restricted unit, spending most hours of each day alone in his cell. Many people thought this was the end of the story, but new developments proved otherwise. He wants to take it back. In the middle of 2026, Kohberger surprised many people by filing a court request asking to take back his guilty plea. He claimed the plea deal was based on wrong information given to him by his own legal team, and he argued that he should be allowed a full trial instead. In a public statement, he said his innocence was the real truth and that his plea should be canceled. This request reopened old wounds for the victims' families and brought the case back into the headlines once again. At the same time this legal fight was unfolding, a new piece of media brought even more attention to the case. The new Netflix documentary. A new documentary called The Idaho Murders, College Nightmare began streaming on Netflix in the summer of 2026. Made with the help of an experienced true crime filmmaker, the series focuses mostly on the 4 students who lost their lives, using police footage, family interviews, and material that had never been shown to the public before. The goal of the series was to remind viewers who these 4 young people really were, beyond just being names connected to a crime story. It also looked closer at Kohberger's background and the small choices that eventually led investigators to his door. Now, with all of this laid out, here is where things stand right now. Where things stand today. As of now, Bryan Kohberger remains in prison, serving his 4 life sentences, while the courts continue to review his request to withdraw his guilty plea. Legal experts are divided on whether this request has any real chance of success, since guilty pleas are normally very hard to reverse once they are accepted by a judge. The victims' families continue to push forward with their own efforts, including memorial gardens, scholarships, and other ways to keep the memory of their loved ones alive. This case forever changed a quiet college town, and even years later, people across the country are still trying to understand how something like this could happen in a place that once felt so safe. If the story affected you, remember that behind every headline were 4 young people with real families, real dreams, and real futures that were taken from them far too soon.